today is campaign planning talking day. Black Friday is coming around the corner. There's this whole process that happens in the back end that I think is really useful to talk about.
Typically what always happens is a ball gets dropped somewhere on a campaign or a campaign launch. That could be emails go out the wrong time, or an influencer forgets to post on the right day. That's typically the first breakthrough that we have to educate a brand about campaign planning.
So with all that being said, let's help whoever's watching and listening not make those errors that, we've seen dozens of different types of errors. If we can maybe show them the process that we go through and talk them through step by step how we do it, and then possibly we can sprinkle in at the right time what to look out for so that you don't fumble. Welcome back yet to another episode of the Right Hook Pod, where we share with you all the stuff that we are doing, working with the brands that we work with to help them grow. If you're new here, do consider subscribing. As always, we got our boy Ray. Ray, today is campaign planning talking day. Black Friday is coming around the corner. We've got that, but also at the same time, just like the campaign planning that we do every time there's a new collection coming up, a new product line that's about to be dropped, or just new stock, new inventory, new stuff. Instead of YOLOing straight into dropping spend, which I think a lot of people possibly think that that's what happens, or it's just like, oh yeah, we'll talk about it like 30 minutes and then we'll just start putting stuff into the ad account and then off we go. There's this whole process that happens in the back end that I think, is really useful to talk about. Where's a good place to start?
Well, I'd love to tell a cautionary tale first, because I wish every brand that comes to us, it's like this right out of the gate. I think it's just not realistic. Because sometimes brands come to us, and maybe because they're growing so fast, or it's just that founder by themselves. And frankly, they're just surviving at that point. Like, their heads above water, they're making some money. But as you often say inside to our leadership team, like, what got you here is not going to get you to the next point. And so a lot of times it's a bit of an education process. So typically what always happens is a ball gets dropped somewhere on a campaign or a campaign launch. That could be emails go out the wrong time, or an influencer forgets to post on the right day. That's typically the first breakthrough that we have to educate a brand about campaign planning. Now, the cautionary tale I want to tell you actually goes back to, you mentioned Black Friday. I think it's a really apt time to understand how important campaign planning is. So there was a brand we used to work with one time. And this brand, they had a lot of different marketing channels. They had Meta, they had Google, they had email, they had influencers. They had obviously their team managing the organic posts. And the cautionary tale that is really important here is they all had different times they expected the sale to go live. So what actually ended up happening is every channel went live with ads at a different time. Emails went out at a different time. But the most important thing is some Lone Ranger who was supposed to turn the code on their website didn't get a time at all. And so what happened? They all went live, sales live. 10,000 visitors that day went to the store to buy something, and there was no code, there was no promotion, there was no discount, and they just left. So that's a great example of just how something so small of just being really careful to make sure you plan accordingly. Everyone's in the know. It's project coordinated appropriately, can literally make you miss out on almost 6 figures in revenue. So
in a day.
Great cautionary tale. A day, in one day too.
Okay. So clearly, and of course, I think the thing that I'm taking away from this is severalfold. One, the more channels that you have, the more coordination that you require.
Yeah, and it's a lot of coordination too.
Right. Absolutely.
It's not a small amount.
And clearly, the more offers that you have are running on the same within that same period. If you're as daring as to have like multiple offers for, you want to get zany and all that, the more coordination. And then, of course, the more different types of creative you want to test, or the more types of experiments that you want to have running for that time also, or at least prior to that. And then you're collating all of that into whatever you think are going to be the winners for launching that thing, the more coordination there is. I think coordination is the key word here.
It's like a superpower, frankly.
Right. And then also but coordination doesn't come out of like, it's not like a movie where everyone just sets their clock and be like, meet back at like, at 5 o'clock, and then off they go and do their own thing without the comms. So much of it comes into that pre-stage where, I mean, truth be told, it's almost like a project management hat that everyone has to put on to make sure that all this, like, no stone is left unturned. Something like, okay, we've got all the creative, all the obvious stuff is out of the way, but if no one sits there to go, wait, who's doing the code part? Like, which one of you guys are doing that? Then it could undermine the whole thing. Or, just like sending out the wrong messaging between one channel and the other, or pushing the wrong product between one channel and the other, for like timing wise, could also start confusing customers as well. And I think here's the thing, right? Like, where, beyond not messing up, what else does the planning allow us to do? Like, does it help us like forecast like revenue in terms of like budgeting? Is it only just the moving parts and what needs to get executed?
No, I mean, you already mentioned it partially. It's like, not properly campaign planning is the difference between making 6 figures a day in revenue and maybe even profit, depending on your size, and being extremely underwhelmed with how little money you make. Like, that's the difference that campaign planning can create. Now, but what it allows you to do, to answer your question specifically, is it allows you to, number one, forecast revenue, forecast inventory that you need for that campaign plan. Also, to make sure that you can get the most bang for your buck. Because think about it, before you even turn on an ad, you've invested inventory somewhere. You've invested your own time, effort, and sweat to begin this process of campaign planning with different influencers or different channels, and you're going to make an investment on ads. It's a big difference between that money going down the drain versus that money multiplying for you and your brand. So it covers many facets, and I just want to kind of list them off. We can actually dive into them. Forecasting, inventory, also covers media buying, how much ad spend. It covers aligning all the moving pieces of your brand. Because sometimes if you have a 3PL, you need to align with them too. Make sure, hey, tomorrow we're going to sell 10,000 units maybe. Because what if they don't have anyone on clock for the next week because they're all going on vacation, right? So it's a few moving parts.
Yeah, for sure. So with all that being said, let's help the people. Let's help whoever's watching and listening not make those errors that, I mean, we've seen dozens of different types of errors. If we can maybe show them the process that we go through and talk them through step by step how we do it, and then possibly we can sprinkle in at the right time what to look out for so that you don't fumble. Maybe this might be a good place to go do that. Where does it all start? Like, what kicks off the entire campaign planning process?
Great question. So we use a few different principles when we campaign plan. And the principles are important to make sure you do it correctly. So the first one is one home base for everything. And what that means to us is you need to have one place that everyone who's involved with that campaign can turn to find all the information about that one campaign. And so for us, because we project manage and ClickUp, we invite the brands that we partner with to also be in ClickUp so that them and their team are in there, our team are in there, and we have one home base. So for example, in our ClickUp, for each brand we work with, we have one home base where everything lives. And as you can see right here, we have specific months. So we campaign plan for every single month in the future. And we have a campaign calendar, which I'll show you in a few moments. But let's say for the month of August, we're taping this, we're halfway through August. When I click into it, you'll see everything that's planned for that month for that one particular brand. So when I click through, here is what it looks like. So for the month of August for this particular brand, there's 3 main milestones that we're planning for. We're planning for a new clearance sale, we're planning for a new drop of a new style, and then a second drop in that same month. Okay, so just to echo back, we have 2 drops and 1 sale we're planning for that entire month. Then, so how we do it is for each campaign, we clearly articulate what are the things that we need? Now, for us, we believe every single person needs to have a task alongside the thing that has to get done and a due date. So D, I'm sure you can appreciate, you can jump in here on how important that is. But for us, because we're the ones managing things on our side, we specifically will even task the brands and their team, hey, we need this information from you by this date. So for example, let's look at the spring drop. The spring drop, here we have, what are the timelines and the strategies? Like, what is the exact time this thing is supposed to go live so that the email team's in there, the Google team, the social team, the web dev team, the client, their team are in here, and we're all clarified this is the thing that's going live by what date. Then we also have a clear link to what are the creative assets. Many of these brands did a photo shoot ahead of time. So again, and any designs that we make or their team make goes into one place so that if they need to use our designs or we need to use their designs, everything is in one place that the entire team has access to. Then we have to articulate what are the exact products that are going to be part of this sale or part of this product drop. Because again, it would be really bad, and we've seen this before, if you send an email or you send a text message saying new product drop is available, and you either give the wrong link or you show products that actually aren't part of it or actually aren't part of the sale. For example, we had I can see you smile. We had a brand one time that didn't articulate this. And so what happened was they had a customer service nightmare where everyone was demanding that same offer that they got via text message and email, even though it wasn't clear what products were or were not part of it.
Oh boy, I'm getting acid reflux. It's too early for this, man. It's too early for this.
Then we have to articulate and be clear, where does the landing page live? So if it's a new drop, we will create a new landing page just for that drop, just for that. If it's a spring drop or a fall drop or a summer drop, has to be one landing page that people go to, and we add the products there. And then here within those tasks, we are working with the brands and their team to make sure they have the landing page created and they share the link. Make sure that they share their creative assets. Make sure that they confirm and double and triple check the timeline and strategy. And then we have tasks as well for us and their team to review the creative, to review the schedule. And as you can see right here, this is where we are communicating with the actual brand and their team, because things change and that happens. Like maybe you're going to have a drop next week and come to find out that, hey, some of the shipments are delayed. Cool. So we need to push it back another week or another 2 weeks. That's okay. Things will change, expect it, but we need one line of communication that, again, everything is archived in one place so that everyone has full visibility if there is a change.
Yeah, for sure. Can we go back through? Like one layer, please, just real quick? So if we go to the right. So let's kind of, we're showing you ClickUp and what we do, but let's kind of translate this over to what to how you guys can actually like think through this. Number one, plan ahead. As you can see, August 2024, you want to have the same for September, October, et cetera, et cetera. Once you understand that, or rather, once you have that in your in your planning, whatever work platform that you're using, make sure that you know what the key milestone or key events are happening within that time. For those key events, what products are tied to those key events? And then also being clear around, and you mentioned this earlier, Ray, how much product, how much inventory there is also for that product, right? And then doing some mathing to make sure that you understand, based off of that, how much inventory do we have to move? How much retail value is it actually worth? And then being able to forecast that and go, how do we tie that back to like budget allocation also that sits within this work? And then most of the stuff that Ray's showing you down at the bottom, that is where you want to make sure that you got your ducks lined up in a row, at least from a digital standpoint and your marketing standpoint. That sound about right, Ray?
Yes. And you can see every project, there's a double click into the full calendar. So this is the full calendar that we have with that brand. So as you can see, we have every quarter of the year, this for every brand. And what's important to understand here is every time we meet, we're always looking ahead. So we're already having conversations about Q4, even though it's Q3. And anytime the brand and us confirm another marketing event, we add it to the calendar. So for us, it's not a surprise. We've been planning this for months. It's been on the calendar for months. You can even scroll ahead. You can start seeing things we have planned for September. We have things planned for Q4. And so it makes it that much easier to plan when you know what's coming the next month, the month after that. And that's a big part of the conversation to where, because it's hard because every business, there's maybe fires that are happening. There's trying to focus on surviving this week, but forcing yourself to just keep thinking ahead, keep planning ahead. It's really what just saves the anxiety and keeps you from dropping balls, because now you're not surprised when something's coming down the pike next week. Oh crap, I have to plan for that. No, you've already been talking about it. You and your team have already started prepping for it. That's a huge lifesaver.
Yeah. You're not trying to start, putting stuff for tomorrow's campaign like yesterday.
And so funny, we have a brand right now. They just started working this, by the way. They've had so much success that their team is quite unorganized. And so what happened was we actually got an email yesterday. Oh, by the way, we're launching this new product tomorrow. Really great classic example. And it's not that they can't plan. It's that they've survived for so long, just kind of being unorganized. And frankly, because they don't think ahead, that as soon as they get something, as soon as the inventory drops, they try to launch it the next day, right? So it's just poor planning, poor structure across the board, which the more you tighten that in, you're going to perform much better over a longer time horizon.
Yeah. I'm going to jump in and say this right now. You can get really, really far. And we've seen this time and time again. You can get really, really far being fairly disorganized, and you can crank revenue. Like you can crank a bunch of sales. Where it gets difficult is, again, one, what got you here won't get you there. But the number two, if you stay disorganized like that, as your company starts to grow and as like your product line starts to increase, or you've got more people that you have hired on your team now, the headaches per dollar earned just skyrockets through the roof. Like the anxiety level and just missing balls and dropping them all the time. It starts to really, the cracks become bigger. The stakes become bigger each and every time, because you want your drops to make more money, and you want each quarter to start making more money than the previous one. So that the insistence on getting this type of organization into the pace of working, that's mainly why, so that we can go into battle knowing what everyone is doing ahead of time, rather than just like, everyone pick up a sword and a gun and let's just run to the field, figure it out. A lot less casualties when you start planning ahead of time, for sure.
I think a lot less frustration, and I always bring it back to, you're going to make so much more money, because I've had the luck of doing campaign planning for a long time. And when you have an influencer, an email, when you have PR, when you have all the other marketing channels, when on the same time, at the same day, they go out with that message, you're going to have so much more momentum and so much more ability to make more money versus kind of like haphazard, randomly or not at all. It's really important if you want to just make more money and more profit, frankly. But one other thing I want to show you, D, as well, is one of the things that we do is we actually have tools to help forecast for our brands. So for example, we'll forecast ad spend required to hit certain revenue. We'll forecast how much revenue can we expect from our list, our email list, and our SMS list. And so that's a big part of campaign planning. And I promise I would bring it up now, is before we do that, we do have a conversation with the brand. How much revenue do we want to make from this? Again, like what you said, once we know the retail value, what's the reality that we think we can actually sell through all of it, or sell through most of it, or sell through just part of it? So we'll go through those paces, go through this calculator of identifying, okay, well, last sale, here's how it performed. Our last product drop, here's how it performed. Here's how we think this will perform this time based off our list size. And the cool part here is, if you, for example, as you can see right here, if you don't have a list size big enough to hit the revenue goal you want, well, then now you know what your gap or your delta is to try to acquire that, if you want to choose to take that risk and acquire those email addresses and phone numbers by that time.
Yeah. Just again, same thing, just so that we're not going in completely blind. Can you, for the people that have not seen this calculator before, can you talk through how it actually works?
Sure. So there's different perspectives when you're doing a campaign launch. You have ad spend. Ad spend is going to perform your ad spend in advertising. That will perform very differently than saying an email list or an SMS list. And so when you want to forecast, my preferred method is to kind of isolate them and look at them individually. And then once you have the forecast individually, then it gives you the bigger picture of the whole of if you need to spend more on ads, rely more on email. So how we do it, I'm looking at email first, because email for your brand is the lifeblood of your profit. That's how you get returning customers. And if you want more profit, have a bigger email list. So what we do first is we identify, okay, what's the goal? Well, we want to make $250,000 from this campaign launch. Okay. And if we know our average order value and we know, based off those numbers, we can then come up with, okay, how many purchases do we think we can get? As well as if we need a certain email list, how much ad spend are we willing to delegate to teasing or building that list? Then an important part of what we do here is we go back and we look at previous campaign launches, because historical benchmarks are amazing predictors for future as well. So we want to look at, how did the last 2 or 3 campaign drops go? Okay, how much revenue do we make from it? How many purchases do we make from those emails? What was the conversion rate on those? What was the list size that we sent the email to? Because once you have the average performance, we can come up with pretty good benchmarks of what we can expect in the future. And then what we do is we say, okay, what is our email list size now? And then we start to forecast, okay, if we want to grow that. So let's say, for example, we don't have a big enough email list to make $250,000 because the last few campaign sends didn't make that much. Okay, well, if we want to spend ads to make that bigger, here are just different cost per lead thresholds we can expect if we want to build that list. And then based off of that list, we can start to forecast, okay, how many new opt-ins do we think we can generate? What's the target list size we need to hit that revenue amount? And then it tells us essentially, well, then I have to generate 7,000 more email signups according to my current benchmarks of the past to guarantee that $250,000 in revenue. So it helps you understand, like, what's your gap. So you can have proper expectations. Well, if I don't want to spend that much money to acquire this many email addresses, well, then you're not going to make that revenue amount. But if you are you willing to make that risk to get that investment?
Yeah. And then set the target accordingly rather than pull one out of thin air.
Yes.
Or out of, somewhere that's closer to the behind region of your body.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, that's helpful. And so, okay, this is what you're seeing here essentially is a sheet where we just get pretty much, this is the sheet that our nerds use to just like nerd out completely over not only unit economics, but then also, as you can see in here, like revenue forecasting and stuff like that. At some point, we're going to just bundle this whole thing up and just make it public for people to run through and be able to do it for themselves. Right now, it's completely unusable, I think, for public consumption to be able to just go in there and know exactly how to use it. But I wonder what would happen if we, what it would take for us to make that whole thing.
Maybe if we had a bunch of people commenting and ask for it, we could bundle up.
Ooh, I like what you're doing there. Yes. So, hey, if you want to steal this stuff, let us know in the comments to actually, like, we're doing a pre-sale here. We talked about it in a previous episode. We're doing a pre-sale. And by the way, the cost is $0. So if you think it's going to be helpful for you to steal that sheet to start using and applying it for yourself, let us know in the comments. However you want to. I'm not going to make you comment a word. That's just silly. And if we get enough people, I don't know what the enough number is, but if we get a read and we get enough people asking for it, we'll then get our designers to make sure that, one, it looks a lot more usable and user friendly, and then two, we'll just make it public and you guys can have it. Nice. I like that.
There you go. Let's see some comments.
Good thinking.
To bring it back full circle, as ugly as that sheet may be, the important function it creates is setting realistic targets. How quickly do you think we'll sell out of this product line? If positive, best case scenario, if we don't sell out in the first day, for example, you saw in that sheet, had a huge gap based off historical benchmarks. Okay, well, that means we probably won't sell out that first day. Maybe it'll take a week. Maybe it'll take 2 weeks, but at least it helps us understand future cash flow to make that decision because it took into account past performance. Now you can have some kind of confidence of, I am willing to make that investment to grow the list. Or honestly, I just want to make sure I maintain the most amount of profit as possible. Let's not do any ad spend and we'll just survive off email because I know I'll make $20,000 or $30,000 per email.
Yeah. Having benchmarks is so helpful for exactly that reason, because then you can be very clear around whether going into this next campaign, you are setting expectations far away or close to the prior benchmark, right? So if it's been generating $30,000 each time, and then your next campaign you're like 250, that's a big leap.
Yeah, not even realistic either.
Yeah, that's a big leap. Is there anything else that goes into this that we should share with everyone watching?
We have same portion for the email list size. We have one for ad spend. So we want to also make up that gap of revenue. How much do we have to spend? Because your list size is finite. Your organic following is finite. So to make it that $250,000, email will take one portion. Organic may take another little portion. If you want to really hit that number, you have to make it up with ad spend. So there's another calculator for ad spend. Now, again, the whole reason why I nominated this topic is because we're coming into Black Friday. And now is a perfect time to start taking your historical performance, because it's going to tell you probably how well you're going to perform over Black Friday. But then also start getting yourself comfortable with thinking ahead and setting proper expectations for yourself of what can I expect. So a lot of brands come to us and they say, I want to make $1 million in November. Okay, cool. Let's look at historical benchmarks. How are things been going in Q3 leading up to Q4? And for making $100,000 a month, 10xing in a short amount of time, like that's a big ask unless you have some kind of breakout. But it's really helpful to have those healthy looking yourself in the mirror, again, so that you're not blinded by what is reality and what is just a pipe dream.
Yeah. From a process standpoint, beyond inventory, and listing them out and making sure that you have all that stuff going on, and what you showed us in the ClickUp, are there any other areas that need coordination that could be easily looked over or not thought about? Like, for example, the code thing that you spoke about.
Yes.
Like, what does that look like, and how can anyone here go, okay, well, let's make sure that I don't oversee these other things too?
Yeah. So very simply, from site to eyeballs, what are the things you have to make sure is ready to go? So from site, are you using a third party to generate a coupon or a site-wide discount or a freebie with every order, like whatever that thing is? And also, do you have the product page and the collection page with imagery, right? If your website's not locked down, okay, is everything ready to go? Or do I have the option to where I can turn it on when it goes live, or I update the banner on my homepage to let them know this new thing is happening? Because what often happens is actually funny you mentioned this. Some brands, they'll have a collection page and a product page, but they hid it from the search bars, they hid it from the navigation, so no one can freaking find it unless you send traffic there. This is a great opportunity to update the hero, update the navigation so people can find it more easily, because not everyone's going to come directly from an ad or an email. Okay. Then once you have that figured out and the timings and all that, then eyeballs. When are we going to post on Instagram and stories and TikTok? What time? When are we going to send the email, the SMS? How many? What's what's the messaging going to be? What do we want to focus on? Do we want to focus on the style of the collection? Do we want to focus on the inspiration, how we got inspired to create that product, or the flavors, whatever that main message is? Then when do we want ads to turn on? How much ad spend we want to require? So in a short amount of time, it's not that much, but it's often just overlooked because there isn't a simple way to make someone ahead of time think through these different parts, or you can choose to opt out of them. But that's the important part, is knowing what they are and deciding what am I going to do and who's going to do it and by when and what date.
Mm. And so let's take one step back from that. As a founder or the person heading up the marketing, what you want to have done prior to that. And I know I'm preaching to the choir. I just want to make sure that to make it blatantly obvious for the ones that might miss it. Then we were thinking about we're moving backwards. So of course, what product? And then what is the product page that sells that product, or the collection page, et cetera. Then we've got the eyeballs, the traffic to drive to that page to then be able to sell the product. And then prior to that, especially if it's a campaign that's not Black Friday, then your job as brand founder, marketing director, the person heading up that piece, is to then identify, or at least brief out, what is the messaging? What is the unique angle? Like, what's so special about this drop? Right? What's so special about this campaign if it's not a drop? And how is it gonna hit audiences? Because you're not, and we've talked about this in multiple previous episodes, especially if this campaign, for example, your boss or you might decide the objective of this campaign is to reach new markets. We're a supplement brand for dudes that want to get yoked in the gym. We've got a dad bod campaign to try to extend the market into a whole other different area. Is the messaging clear? Is the value proposition clear? Or is the imagery that isn't what our usual evergreen imagery is going? Is that already? And is the team clear around what that looks like? How that feels? Do we have mood boards? Do we have certain keywords? How does this kind of manifest itself? Do you have that brief to then start getting all that creative together, start talking about all those different pieces, and then to move into the coordination part of it? So you kind of need all that first to know what direction you're walking towards before you start going, okay, well, first destination is this, and then we're going to take a little rest stop here. And then before you start driving, you kind of want to know where you want to start driving. And then you can fill all these other things in there. And of course, the product part plays into this too. But in the example that I gave, for example, with the dad bod one, it's not new product necessarily. It could just be repackaged product or rebundled for the dad bod community. I don't know if it's a community or not, but I haven't seen any dad bod Reddits. I don't spend that much time on Reddit. But point being, it's not like you're committing to a completely new product line and a whole bunch of inventory in that example. So it's just a repurposing of your existing product and repackaging it. So getting clear on what those angles are. Another example is a brand that's really good friends of ours, July Luggage. So it's the Olympics, and they managed to be an Aussie team Olympic sponsor. So a lot of their campaigns, there's no new luggage, right? It's not about that. It's about the fact that they are now partnered and supporting the Australian delegation that is sent off to the Olympics to try to win some gold. So a lot of that brief kind of comes out. It might seem obvious on the outside, but on the inside, for the planning to then go, well, what is the imagery? What kind of clearances do we need to have? Because we're partnering with the Olympic Committee. So there are certain things we can show and certain things that we can't show and formats that we can and cannot show that also. So having all those things planned ahead of time, this is what we mean by campaign planning, guys. It's not beyond the tactical stuff by the time it gets to that point. So much of the planning starts even prior to that. And I would bet you that conversation didn't start, that conversation between July and the Olympic Committee didn't start June 2024.
No.
So plan accordingly that way so that you can have your campaign actualize the potential that you think it has. It's not necessarily just a drop. It could be a new collection. It could be a PR push. It could be moving into new markets. So don't get too literal with just product dropping, because there are so many other things baked into what Ray was sharing with us there too.
And I know what it feels like to potentially be a brand founder who's listening to this, that, oh, that's a lot of work. I'm happy with my organized chaos because it's working for me right now. I just want you to understand that the reason why I nominated this topic is because it's literally the difference between you making more money. So if you're against wanting to make more money, keep doing what you're doing, have at it, have fun. But for example, there's 2 new members in our dojo mentorship community. Both of them are female founder brands who were part of our Black Friday webinar series last year. They incorporated just a fraction of the planning that we taught them last year. And afterwards, it was so successful. They sent us a video telling us how much more money they made because they listened to just a fraction, because they didn't have time to do everything because they were a bit late on it. That is a great example that they listened to just a fraction of that campaign planning, to those playbooks, and they had so much more success than they otherwise would have had. So that's the big difference between why this is so important, as very systematic as it is, especially if you're a person that just wants to be action all the time. You have to understand how important it is and get someone else to help you, hire someone to help you, get a fractional freelancer if you have to, or a consultant to help you. But this is a big deal. I'll never forget. We have a brand that we worked with for many years. They were a ring making company. And this company was founded by one dude, a bit of very organized chaos. He was running the ads himself, doing the emails himself.
Yeah, scrappy,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And he was successful, absolutely. But he was in like the low $100,000 a month. Okay. Over the course of several years, and I remember because every time we had to kind of take them kicking and screaming, because it was against his nature to plan. He just wanted to be a do guy. It was against his nature. But finally, by just telling him how important it is, that guy over several months grew from that low revenue amount to his first $1 million a month, because he got some help from his team, a project coordinator that could help him plan. We got him to plan early and to think ahead early, to plan all the little details and the messaging and Dee's point, like what's the value proposition we want to go with. That's important. And he had his first $1 million a month by listening to that advice. So this works. This is honestly the unlock to making more money, is by being more strategic in your planning of your future, whether that's marketing moments, whether that's evergreen moments, all of that, whatever path you choose, this is the unlock for that.
Yeah. And even if it's on top of unlocking a revenue achievement, like being able to hit a new threshold of revenue, I'm going to say it again, the headaches per dollar earned, the headaches really start to go down. Because of this. It'll feel unnatural especially for the action takers, the doers, the roll your sleeve uppers. It'll feel unnatural at the time. It'll feel sort of frustrating at the time because you feel like you're not moving. You're not kicking down doors and busting bad guys. You're scribbling on a piece of paper how you're going to kick down doors and bust bad guys, which doesn't feel like the same thing. Totally get that and completely appreciate it, what that feels like. However, after you get the first one out of the way, and like Ray showed you, you've got that template in there, every other time after that feels less frustrating because you've got that sheet, that kind of checklist. Before the plane takes off, you're sitting there in the cockpit. You're not just guessing which buttons to push and what gauges to check. You just got this checklist and you're just going, check, check, done. Okay, cool. No one's going to die on this plane, including myself. Let's fly. Right? Rather than, you know what? I feel like taking a flight today. Let's just jump on in and see how it goes.
You know what's funny? A buddy of mine, he's trying to be a commercial pilot right now. He already has like his 5,000 flight hours and he has his own plane. And actually, because sometimes he flies in my town on his way through and we'll go and like have lunch, whatever. And I sat there and he has a massive clipboard of, even though he just flew 5 hours somewhere, every single time he does a flight, he goes to his pre-flight checklist, no matter what. And it's that discipline that forces you not to have a plane accident, because every time, you force yourself. Exactly. Yeah. So you don't die. And so he understands the wisdom in that, even though it takes him more time.
Yeah. Don't put it this way. Like, don't end up on the news. You don't want to end up on the news. Not for stuff like that. So, and this is the point I'm trying to really drive home here. Like, if all it took to, if you're so confident in your ads, and you're creative and your angles and your product, and you've put in all the work and you've grinded the way that you grinded anyhow, if the key determinant between the difference between you making a few $100,000 a month, or even if you're in the 5 figures, and having a 7-figure month, is just sitting down and planning. Like, sitting down and planning, right? You're already getting photo shoots. You're already talking to content creators. You're already doing all that stuff anyway. So all you got to do is just something different. I feel like I'm speaking to a certain pocket of our audience right now, but that pocket really clearly we hit something here. If that's the key difference, then why not do it? And if it's once and done for the most part, because you've got that blueprint, you can use it next time. Why not that? That really is the take-home message that I'm trying to put forward here, so that ClickUp list and working within one home base, and not shooting off a WhatsApp message to one contractor, and then a Slack message to another freelancer, and then whoever to your team members, and then being like, if a team member doesn't know where something is, you just be like, I don't know, go check the WhatsApp thing. If that's how you're running it now, then making that slight change, I promise you, headaches per dollar earned for yourself, and also this net headaches per dollar earned is going to go down, and campaign success is going to go up. Right. All right. Let's start landing this plane here. If there was, when it comes to the campaign planning piece, can we just echo back, or at least key points? What should you look out for? What does campaign planning cover? And just summarize the whole thing. And then let's take it through to the end, where what they should look out for.
Yeah, very simply, at the bare minimum, always look 3 months in advance and plan the next month. Okay. Once you do those 2 steps, then for each marketing moment, look at on-site. What are the things you have to remember on-site? And then for eyeballs, you or other external partners like influencers or ads, what are the offer, the dates, what are the products, what are the key messaging, what's the landing page, and if there's any discounts or offers that I might have mentioned already. If you just do those, that will take you majority of the way there. And you just do that, always planning ahead. And then if you want to take a stab at a forecasting calculator, like the one we have, take a stab at that. If you do that, you're already above 80% of every other brand who's just flying by the seat of their pants. And you will already have so much more success if you just do those things.
And then from what Ray just said, have one place, use I don't know, if you don't have, if you don't want to pay for a tool, like, use the free version of it, but have some type of a work management platform to be able to list out all of the things. Look through all the action items with your team, or I don't know, with someone else, a second pair of eyes and possibly a third pair of eyes, and look through it together. Make everyone sit down. Don't do it async. Make everyone sit down and read it through line by line and go, does this seem right? And are we missing anything? And pause and let there be silence in the room so that people can mull over it and go, oh, wait, are we actually missing anything? If even the slightest thought of, hey, maybe you should put it in. and then keep the thing going. Are we missing anything else? Put it in. And by doing that, you would have a list. For example, here internally, every time we do a Zoom public, we have a list that no one has to do any type of creative thinking. They just have to go through that list to make sure that we have a successful Zoom webinar and people can show up. Every time we have a lead magnet, same kind of deal. Every time we have this pod, we kind of have that same type of list. Turn on the camera, turn on the lights, turn on your audio, hit record, because I don't want to forget stuff, right? Charge your battery.
I know.
And
so
even then
funny.
you still miss it. But if you didn't have a list, you're guaranteed to miss it a lot more. Point blank. Ray, thank you so much for talking us through campaign planning. For all of y'all here, if you think this campaign planning episode was helpful, you might want to check out some of the other episodes where we talk through not only campaign planning, but then also budget allocation and a whole bunch of stuff more. We'll see you in those episodes. In the meantime, Ray, I'll see you next time.
See ya.
See ya. See you, everyone.